and welcome to today's webinar, Cradle to the Grave, using Microsoft 365 for your information lifestyle management needs. And this is part one of a three-part webinar series. I'm Nina, production manager at AIIM, and AIIM is your host of today's event. Cadence Solutions is the sponsor of today's webinar. We thank them for their support and thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, I'd like to share some tips for participating in today's webinar. In the chat box, we'll share links to resources and references pertaining to today's webinar. Go to the chat now, say hello, and let us know where you're joining from. If you have any questions for the speakers, ask them in the Q&A section or put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to them later in the webinar. At the end of the webinar, there will be a link to our feedback survey. Let us know how we did. Your feedback is important to us. Friendly reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to AIIM.org's Resources Learning Center page in a few days. Now to introduce today's host of MC, Kevin Crane. As AIIM's content strategist, Kevin authors ebooks and infographics on a wide variety of intelligent information management and digital transformation topics. He's the producer and host of AIIM on Air podcast, which was recently listed as a top 10 business process managing podcast and named one of 2022's top electronic discovery podcasts by Player.fm. Take it away, Kevin.
Thanks, Nina. Hi, everybody, and welcome again to another great AIIM webinar, this time with our friends from Cadence Solutions. And we're talking about using Microsoft 365 for information management. And in fact, this is the first in a three-part series with Cadence exploring Microsoft 365. This time we'll be talking about templates and e-signatures and automated reminders. And these are all really important things to be thinking about and investigating, because managing information, managing content effectively means really managing the process effectively. But many organizations get bogged down when it comes to process, specifically with the review and approval and monitoring of things like proposals or contracts and onboarding. The inefficiencies in case management can be a big challenge, especially when the process is complex and there are large volumes of documents involved. So what can we do to remove the friction and improve process performance? In this webinar, we will be exploring the use of templates, e-signatures, and automated reminders within Microsoft 365 to streamline content management and hopefully bring a new level of efficiency to core enterprise processes. We're going to look and learn how to effectively utilize pre-approved templates and termination reminders, how to streamline sending of contracts and other documents for review and e-signature approval, and ultimately reducing risk by identifying and remediating and monitoring all the data along the way. So get set for another informative session today. But before I introduce our guest expert, I do want to encourage all of you to be a part of the discussion today as well. As we go along, please feel free, and I encourage you to enter your questions, your comments into the Q&A feature. Nina and I will be monitoring that stream, and we will work to get your questions into the discussion in the later part of the event today. So don't be shy. We're all part of a big community of experts and practitioners here, so we want to hear from you too. With that, let's get to our guest expert today, Jordan Uytterhagen. Jordan, are you with us today? There you are.
I am, Kevin.
Welcome,
hello.
Jordan. Jordan is the founder and managing director of Cadence Solutions, a leading Microsoft 365 services company based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. He is an expert in Microsoft 365. Jordan and his team have completed more than 80 implementations across North America in a variety of industries, including energy, utilities, financial services, insurance, the public sector. So get ready for an informative session today with Jordan. Jordan, welcome. Tell us more about Microsoft 365 and the ability to move the needle with information management and how we can really maximize the use of templates and e-signatures and automated reminders for better process performance.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. So thank you for the generous introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Jordan Uytterhagen, as you can see with the webcam and the picture on the screen there. I manage Cadence Solutions. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into the industry, which I think is in the same position that a lot of you are in. So maybe next slide there, if you could, Nina. So I founded Cadence Solutions on the customer side of the table. I was going through a very poor implementation as an IT employee at a municipality. It was awful by the vendor standards that came in and tried to implement an ECM solution. And subsequently, immediately founded a company that was like, we can do an implementation better than the vendor we hired to do it on our behalf. So that's kind of the elevator or short story pitch on what Cadence is about. I've been in the seat where I was hustled by a vendor. We're here to do an authentic, honest, ethical implementation in any of the three technologies here today. Absolutely, we're focusing on Microsoft 365. So we are based in Edmonton, Alberta. We actually do most of our work across the United States. And I think I see a few of you in the chat that we're doing work for already. So if you can go on to the next slide there, Nina. Also, the people that are saying hi from places with much better weather than Northern Canada, thank you for that. Hawaii, Florida, those folks. Great to see people dialing in from sunny destinations. What I'm going to go through today is some of the actual configuration we've done for other clients and how we can start to utilize what you essentially already own inside of the Microsoft 365 subscription or ecosystem. We do a lot of events. We do a lot of in-person events now that the pandemic's over. And the question we get asked a lot is, what do you sell as a product? And the answer is we don't sell a product. We configure what you've already purchased and subscribed to from Microsoft to work for your benefits. And when I was talking with Kevin and Nina about putting on this webinar, we wanted to make sure that we drew out maximizing the software you already own. Specifically today, we'll go through templates, some eSignatures with Adobe Sign. We're going to go through some reminders and things that can be automated. I'm going to show off Teams approvals, which is something that's seldom used in a lot of organizations, but you have at your disposal, which just saves a whole bunch of email noise. You don't need to go through that anymore. So the scenario today will actually be contract management. And we're going to go from start to finish of a contract very quickly too, in 20 minutes or less, from drafting a contract from a template, streamlining the approval process in terms of populating data and placeholders inside of the contract document itself, sending that off for an external e-signature approval with Adobe Sign, and then showing how that all is centralized and consolidated back into a SharePoint doc set, which really, when we go through a lot of these types of initiatives or pain points at organizations, it comes down to the same thing. Are things centralized? Can I find it? Do my people know where to put things and start things that are a part of a process? So next slide there, Nina. So I'm going to take over the screen share here and start showing part of the demonstration. As those questions come in, just put them in the Q&A side. We do have quite a bit of time at the end here for questions. I don't just want it to be a show the whole time. We want to make it very interactive and educational. So Nina, I'm just going to steal the screen share here. And I want to make sure that everybody can see the screen right now. So Nina or Kevin, if you can give me a thumbs up.
Looking good, Jordan.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to start by just going into our contract management area here. Ooh, got to re-authenticate. 1 second. There we are. So I'm going to start by going to the contract management area. And just to kind of set this up, if you've seen me present before, I've done this presentations a few different times, but there's a bit of a different spin on it today. So in the contract management area, I came from a life of implementing contract management solutions. So there's a key difference. If you have a pain point and you're an information management worker and you go to procurement and you say, Can you find every contract and amendment and correspondence for it? Most of the time, they're going to say they can't. The differentiator in them going and procuring a contract management standalone software solution or utilizing what you already have in 365 is one question. Do you want to drive contract level language and clauses in the document from a system? Most of the time, the answer to that's no. And what I mean by that is, if I have a $5 million contract, I want to insert paragraph 1 instead of paragraph 2 into the language and the body of the document or contract that's being drafted. That's a contract management system on steroids relative to what's going to be shown today, which is a document that's tracked and signed that happens to be a contract. We're not generating a whole bunch of language, we're generating some through a template. So as we navigate this, just to kind of understand the structure, every single vendor will have their own folder in the stock library. Every single contract will have a number in a document set. Inside of that document set, there's going to be documents, and pertaining to each document set will be a structure that can be assigned as well. So for example, in this contract, we have contract 42, we have an amendments folder that will hold all of our amendments. We have a correspondence folder, which can be used for email management and any negotiations or any historical things we want to keep. And then we will have our drafted agreements as well as our signed agreements. And we'll go through all the way from the start here by requesting an agreement. So as we go through and request an agreement, we're going to prompt, and this can be a departmental user, with our approved vendors. We want to have some structure, some rigor in our process. That's usually the change management battle we fight a lot of the time when we go through and change how people are doing things day to day. We're going to pick one of our approved vendors, AIIM Corp. A lot of things in contracts world or just drafting things, you don't want them to type in AIIM Corp Inc., AIIM Corp with a period on the end. You want it to be the legal entity name. We'll simply just pick our start and end date for this contract. Let's say it runs the month of January. We can have different metadata for types, goods, services, statements of work, non-disclosures, things that may not have a monetary value. We can type in our project manager, and these can be people, of course, that are internal and do have a valid 365 license. Type in our amounts. It can all be tracked later. And type in our contract manager, our procurement person. Now, of course, with AIIM, a ton of information and records management folks on the line. You can apply your label here. We can apply it by default, or we can auto apply it later on the contract doc set when the contract's actually completed. So post, in this instance, post January 31st, you've completed the contract. Maybe it's a small project here to do some assessment work, and we can move on. Or you can have it auto defaulted here. Now, we can go on in retention labels. That will be in the third part of this series, which is out in the May timeframe. I'm going to save this. And I'm going to jump into the inbox for the person that has saved this. I'm also going to show the Teams website of things. And I'm not sure if anyone has actually seen the Teams approval side of what can be done in Teams. Now, I'm just in Teams web. The same thing works the same way on the desktop side of things. But it is the ability to do approvals right in Teams or in email. It's not one or the other. It's actually both. So we're just waiting for the flow to kind of kick in here and send us out our contract request. Got to do the demos live. If you don't do them live, they don't count. So while we're waiting for that flow to kick in, which just kicked in, maybe by show of hands, is there anybody that has used the Teams approval app before, or that portion of Teams before? All right, looks like we have our approval now. So we'll get the approval in email. If you've used anything with Power Automate or Flow, this is what it's going to look like in an email. We're essentially saying this goes back to procurement from the general user that's requesting a contract. It has all the metadata information that's been filled out, a link to the actual document that's going to be created in the doc set. and an approve or reject button. Of course, you can reject with comments. Now, before I click approve on this, we're going to jump over to Teams. And Teams, on the approval side of things in your activity widget, you're going to get the exact same thing. So this can be notified. It can be prompted like a chat message that pops up. You'll get the little red icon at the bottom saying you have something to do. We actually use this internally at Cadence for all of our vacation requests, sick times, new projects, client onboarding, HR onboarding. All of it runs actually through Teams approvals with Power Automate. It's really slick. So the thing I like most about this, and what most people don't like is email, is if I hit approve here in Teams, I get a little notification saying it's approved. I can jump back to the inbox, open this email, and you'll see the content of it changes. I don't have the approve and reject button anymore. I know this thing's been done already. I can just move on and not have to worry about this email and just subsequently hit delete on it. So Teams approval is going to change how people interact. And I think some of the buy-in and change management around automating these processes as they become more comfortable day-to-day in Teams for chat and file sharing, you kind of parlay in approvals, and you have a very harmonious kind of area for them to go and perform their work, as opposed to pulling an email, logging into a system and clicking OK on a workflow. We don't even need to go to that depth anymore. Jumping back into the requested contracts area, we can create a whole list of any contract request that's been outstanding. We have some that are pending, of course, a whole bunch that are approved, and a few even that are declined in here. Over into the procurement side of things, we created that under AIIM. And in AIIM, we now have contract 43, which was in that email. So we can now begin to draft the actual agreement. We've said, yes, we're allowed to create an area for the contract. Now, in the old paper folder days, this would be a folder that's empty with a label on it, and somebody would start to draft that for you. Now we're actually going to go through and we're going to create a contract in this area. Just looking for the button here on the screen size. One second, everybody. Here we go. Had to find the right button there. We're going to go through and create a statement of work. What this is actually going to do is it's going to run the flow behind the scenes, which is going to go pull that standard contract template from our library that's been approved by legal, and actually put that in front of the user to go through and do that. So we're going to create that. It's going to go through, perform that creation automatically of that document. And now we can go into any kind of co-authoring or anything we need to there. Why we want to go through and do that flow is there's certain areas of the contract or the document, this can be for HR onboarding or any kind of templated thing you're doing. We want to use the placeholders automatically. So our approved vendor, our date on the contract, our standard language if we're going to send this out to an external party for signature, which will be the second part of this demonstration. And we can see that we've pushed that placeholder data all throughout the actual contract. And we've included the vendor in the signature block, as well as the e-signature piece as well. So they can go in here, modify this as they see fit, send it for internal approval. And upon internal approval being completed, it can go for external approval. If you've used co-authoring, it's kind of a standard now. We hire quite a few university graduates here that come from the Google Docs world, and if they don't have co-authoring, they kind of get pretty upset on the job. So that's one thing that we make sure we have enabled. As this is complete, what we can actually do is start to send this out for contract approval. So we can go internally and send it for signature, and then we can go externally and send it for signature. So internally, if we're going through, just going to grab an email address here. Their signer name is Adele. Adele is one of the users in our test environment, and Adele is an external person to the organization. We're going to send this off. The first approval is actually going to be internal. The second approval will be external. We'll give this a few seconds just to fire here. We can see we've already seen this in Teams. So the contract review is in. It's actually faster than the email. We're waiting on this approval before we actually send this off to Adobe Sign to broker or house the signature piece of this. So we're going to approve this. I'm actually going to jump screens. And I'm going to show you this from an outsider's perspective. So now I'm logged in as Adele. We're going to be given our email. Just make this larger if we can, to say, essentially, you have something to sign. Review and sign. I'm sure you all have seen Adobe Sign or DocuSign or one of the versions of an e-signature solution. So we have our document. Again, it has all our placeholders retained in it. It's been signed internally already, and we're able to go out and do an external signature here. Now, this piece, if you'll notice, one of the things that can draw back on a lot of, acceptance from the business side of things is don't let them place where the signature should be. Have that all in the template. The initialing each page, the date that it needs to be signed or that it's signed, you can see it's right under Adele's signature there, where the actual signature needs to be placed. All that should be done up front in the template side of things. We don't want any kind of user interaction on the execution side of this. So we're going to click to sign this one. It's done. Adele has done her job here of signing the contract. She'll be given a copy, of course, in email. And we can jump back into our actual repository. And in a few seconds, it's actually going to jump in here and be a signed, executed agreement. So going through that is all out of the box Microsoft licensing, with the exception of a couple dollars a month for Adobe Sign. Keep in mind, throughout 2023, Microsoft has announced eSignature. It is going to be in their Syntex product. Syntex will be our next webinar in this series in March. I'll also be at the AIIM conference talking a lot about it, but the eSignature announcement from Microsoft is quite a substantial one in the industry. For the records folks, at the end of a contract, if we have not assigned a label, but we want to auto-assign it upon the closure or completion of that contract, we can actually just simply set up a few rules so that when we set the metadata on the contract status from open or active to closed or completed, we can then go ahead and automatically attach the specific retention label to the doc set and all subsequent documents. So at that point, we can start to fire off all the dispositioning, all the retention label rules, and start to actually prepare this to the grave side of everything. So I just flipped that. You're going to see the retention label. This is a previous contract I created this morning. Actually go through and push this into the retention label side of things. Once that's completed, it's actually going to go through and add this as an event in the purview records management disposition side of things. That's the third one in our web series, so we won't get too far into it today, but I'll show a sneak peek here. The retention label's now applied on everything. So again, users, we don't want them to be records managers, but of course we need them as participants. Run the rules on the metadata side of things. Flip the switch when they do the metadata from open to close on the contract, and have that go all the way through into the disposition and events area in purview. So you'll see everything, there's 42 already. We have that event in here, and now the clock can start officially. We could have started at the start of the process too, or wait till the end upon contract completion. So lots of different ways of connecting what you already own inside of 365, and that's definitely the theme of the webinar and what both Cadence and AIIM were going for here. So I am right at 24 minutes. I was told I have 25, so I will turn it back over to Kevin or Nina to maybe guide the next session here, or next section of this.
Very good. Thank you, Jordan. That is Jordan Uytterhagen with Cadence. Now, Jordan, we are having some questions coming in from the audience, so I do want to get to those. And certainly now is the time. If you have a question for Jordan, please go ahead and enter it into the Q&A feature. We will try to get to your question as well. Now, Jordan, I think I want to just maybe address the questions that are coming in sort of no particular order. Well, yes, a particular order, in first come, first serve. First question came in from John as you were speaking. How does Microsoft approvals document items for audit, controls, and access and compliance concerns?
That one I'm going to have to look more into, John. That's a good question. I do have some folks with me today that can dig into that. So folks from Cadence that are sitting in, if you can take a note of that one, we'll get back to John on that one in terms of the in-depth auditing.
Of course, audit, controls, and compliance are a big part of the records managed process. So yes, please do if you have some feedback on that. William is asking about the templates themselves. How exactly are the templates created?
So templates are created through standard Word documents. You can choose to restrict portions of that through the editing capabilities in there as well. And I'll give you a real world example. We worked with a client that had salespeople modifying agreement language in order to close the sale faster. So in their own self-interest, with some clever word restrictions, as well as some templating through this kind of solution, we were able to kind of negate that problem by doing that. So there's no third party there for the template. It's called like tips and tricks with Word, Power Automate, and parlaying that into the SharePoint side of things.
All right, very good. Lisa is asking about the e-signature part of the process, and it came to my mind as you were talking. You talked about Acrobat sign. Why did you choose Acrobat as the signing solution? You also talked about Purview coming around the bend here. Tell us a little bit more about the signing part of it, and is it required now that people use Purview, or can we use DocuSign? How does that all work?
Well, Microsoft has two providers for e-signature that they recommend. They actually recommend Adobe higher than DocuSign. So we went that direction. We did have this actually all running with DocuSign in previous demonstrations. We use DocuSign here at Cadence as well. And the reason we picked it up, or we use Acrobat Sign here at Cadence as well. And the reason we picked it up is they don't charge for any integration with 365. So if you buy what used to be the Acrobat Pro desktop license, it's now an Acrobat standard cloud license. It comes with e-signature, and it comes with the ability to integrate that e-signature with Power Automate at no cost. So it was something like $20 a month. And if you wanted to sign up a team, it was cheaper. So we signed up our team here and reduced the cost. But that is that's the reason for that now. In the future, we're going to go all in on the Microsoft Syntex signature. And the main reason there is the content does not leave one tenant. The document and the contract will remain inside of 365 at all times, including the signature portion. In the past, we've had many discussions with both Adobe and DocuSign on projects about the retention side of what's being signed. How can you prove that this contract or this agreement is not sitting on your servers post whatever our retention period is? And I'll give you some examples. When they're doing settlement agreements and things that are really sensitive that you do not want to have around after that legal mandate, we want to get rid of that. And if we're in two clouds, we have to do our due diligence on the outside one, the signature one, to make sure that's happening.
Very good. Now, we do have part 2 coming up here before I forget, and you will be talking more about Syntex in March, correct?
That's right. Yeah, Syntex. If you haven't heard of it from Microsoft, take a quick Google at it. It is going to be a direct competitor to Kofax, to Captiva, Intelligent Capture, and a few other long-standing tools. And it does a lot more than just form capture. Again, signature, document assembly, so creating content like for us older guys, mail merge style things, and going through and doing field capture. So that's going to be the March event. It's going to be pretty in depth on what it can do. We don't get paid to sell products. I'm not here to sell products. We're just excited about the technology. So,
right. Okay, very good. Well, Nina will have some more information for all of us here at the end of the program today about that March session with you folks coming up, and we're looking forward to that. But back to our questions. Julie is asking about contract management. Is contract management a separate module in Microsoft 365?
So no, it's actually, I'll call it like a clever configuration that we've put together for quite a few of our clients. So it's not a formal module. So if you're interested in learning more about that, just reach out to me and I'll put my contact info up at the end here.
Okay, very good. Tabitha, and thank you everyone for your questions. Keep them coming. We have time here with Jordan today, so let's use this time wisely as we can. Tabitha is asking, would the contract management system work if you have an add-on for records management? And Nina, you took my question away from me while I was reading it. But tell us more about that.
So yeah, if you're using a Gimel and AvePoint, a third party called integrator with that, yes, this is not dependent on Purview in any way. Purview was just the execution engine at the end to dispose of the contract when the retention is up. So you can essentially do everything up until the signature stage, the storage stage without Purview at all. Purview is kind of the cherry on top at the end to show that you can actually dispose of that content.
Very good. Now, tell me more about, are there other organizations or industries? What are the organizations and industries that are using this most successfully? Can you give us an example of one organization that you feel has been particularly successful using these techniques? What did they do and what were the results?
Yeah, so one of the organizations we did this for, they're a benefits company. So they do a lot of I guess wholesaling of those different vendors. And this was the salesperson example where they were changing contract language in order to close the sale faster in their benefit, their personal benefit, not the company benefit. So that was one where just honestly a few configurations and rules put in place in a system just eliminated that risk that the organization was incurring. We've also deployed this, of course, in heavily regulated industries where they do need that compliance side of things to show that this is locked, this has been approved, we haven't changed our standard language. And we even have a public sector client utilizing this as well in contracts. Now they are buying, of course, different things. They're buying, grader blades and gravel and things that are a lot different for public works work versus, maybe transacting from a B2B cost of goods or something like that. So it's used a lot like that, not just for contracts as well. I'll say the contract process is, of course, the in-depth demonstration today. But if you're going through and using this, we use it for HR onboarding. We want to onboard somebody, but before they get in the door, we want to do a criminal record check. We want to send them their benefits info. We want to do all that stuff, and we want to have them sign everything pre-coming in and having to do that all on day one. This can be used for that just as easily. It's the same process. It's the same concept of storage. Instead of a vendor, it's a personnel file, the digital personnel file. And we saw a huge uptick of that, of course, during the pandemic, where a lot of personnel files were in a filing cabinet in an office you couldn't access. It was 6 inches thick, and they were slotting it out by tabs for different secure and sensitive areas. So same concept applies there. You're signing things, anything from external people, vendors, new hires, whatever it may be, to internal users of 365 is where this can be utilized.
Now, in the real world, what kinds of improvements are you folks seeing after the implementation of these tools and techniques? Do you have any measurements that demonstrate, say, the percentage of time saved in a process or the impact to process efficiency?
Yeah, so the time saved, I think the statistic is it's like 20% of your day will be spent looking for things. Just structuring this without process centralization alone will solve that problem. The automation side, so the time saved in terms of executing an agreement, and we even notice that internally here when we send change orders or contracts that need to be signed. If we send it via e-signature, it's signed within 24 to 48 hours. If we send an attachment in an email and it's buried in somebody's inbox, the odds of that getting done in 48 hours is pretty slim unless you're really pestering them on the phone or something. So the time savings is in, I'd say, reduced demand on new headcount, as well as just satisfaction being able to find something and not being frustrated, which is that 20%. I think that's the industry standard there.
Terry is asking, I see we're using Power Automate as well as Adobe Sign as part of your approval process. What advantage do you get by using one over the other?
I think you kind of have to marry the two, Terry. So Power Automate is essentially the flow and the approval of the document, whether that's internally. So we're approving it internally, and we're bugging that team's approval point that says, yes, you need to approve this before we go external. As soon as we cross that floor, that wall, and we go external, that's where we start bringing in the Adobe Sign. So we can actually broker that signature coming back.
We are here today with Jordan Uytterhagen, I think I'm correct with saying that. Sorry, Jordan, Managing Director with Cadence Solutions. You can find out more, and you can find Jordan at cadencesolutions.ca. Now, Jordan, Tabitha is back with another question. For the contract management, can you accept an external contract that comes from outside the organization where you only receive the scanned version?
Yes, absolutely. How we would do that is we would start the request process the exact same way. Instead of drafting the statement of work document, the Word document that we showed with the placeholders, we would import that through Syntex, which will actually capture the scanned version, OCR it, and can actually extract some of that metadata and place that into, say, contract 43 document set with some of that metadata extracted. So yes, that's possible. We actually had that request yesterday from one of our clients to say they were looking at a specific contract management solution that could do that. I said, you already own this stuff in Microsoft. Why don't you go take a peek here and take a look and see if that will accomplish it? And it's that exact scenario. You're not writing it on your organization's paper, but you're, redlining a external vendor's paper.
We are starting to run to the close of our event today. So if you have any more questions for Jordan, please go ahead and pop them into the question and answer. We'll try to get them in here before we have to conclude. But Jordan, in my mind, intelligent information management, the intelligent part of it, really has two sides to the coin. One is improving organizational performance, and one is improving information governance and reducing risk. I want to ask a little bit about both of those sides of the coin real quick here. Starting with organizational and performance, in what ways can I use these techniques to really move the needle in things that move the needle when it comes to performance and like customer experience? Do you have some perspectives on how this can help with customer experience?
Absolutely. So we have many of our customers where we need to onboard as a vendor. The process is painful, filling out countless, mock, even Word document forms that need to be filled out. We always kind of crack the joke of like, we'd love to do this as the first process because we're the guinea pig going through it when we're onboarding as a vendor. So the ability to just simplify the chatter between your organization and whoever on the outside you're doing business with, whether that's a new hire, a new vendor, a new supplier, whatever it may be, that is almost, I don't know if that's measurable, but there's definitely a satisfaction element to that that can be gained by doing some of these tips and tricks. The whole ECM pain point that's the hardest one to solve is inside to outside communication. The ability with 365 and now the signature tools to do that inside to outside collaboration and communication has opened up so many opportunities to go and perform very simple projects that aid in those departments. As a kind of tidbit, I always say this to the AIIM and the RM people. It's tough to get an RM project fully funded from the start. Like I want to do RM across the organization. But if you go find a buddy or an ally in procurement or legal or somebody that has that pain, and you pair that pain point and solution with your need for a governance strategy and a governance implementation together, you end up being able to push that a lot faster politically internally to say, this isn't just about governance and checking boxes on compliance. We're actually going to go automate, pick a process in a department that's kind of a squeaky wheel. And that's always been a key to get in there and get things approved and get what you need to in your job.
And Lisa is asking, what Microsoft level license do I need for all of this?
So if you want to get into full records management in Microsoft without an add-on, you're going to need E5 for that side, or what they call the information govern and protect add-on license if you have an E3. So on our website, actually, there's another webinar we did, I think it was with AIM last year, that has the difference between E1, E3, and E5 and what you have in terms of each of them. If you want either the recording of that, you can go on the site, there's no login required or anything. Or if you want an in-depth spreadsheet of that, just shoot me an email and I can send that over.
Okay. Jordan, it's been great speaking with you today. We're almost out of time, but before I let you go, I did want to get to my last question, which was, how does all of this help me improve information governance and reduce risk?
So I think the risk set is pretty apparent. By centralization allows for labeling, security, locking, the immutability of the record. That's all, boxes we can check from within the centralization aspect, as opposed to going out and having this sitting on my OneDrive and your OneDrive, Kevin, and everybody's side of things there. So the centralize and govern, I think, will resonate already, of course, with the crowd on the call today. But that's one that's a big benefit of a project byproduct. So we're going in with not that is the main intent of the business, but we're definitely checking that box as we go through and perform that implementation.
Very good. That is Jordan Uytterhagen, Managing Director at Cadence Solutions. It's cadencesolutions.ca. Jordan, thanks a lot for being a part of our event today, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in March.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Well, all right, another great webinar today. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Nina to tell us more about part 2 coming up in March and some other great stuff. Nina, what's going on?
Absolutely. So if you loved the first part of this series, you'll enjoy part 2 of Forms and Document Capture Solutions in M365. It's coming in March 22nd. So if you signed up for this webinar, you are automatically signed up for the rest of the series. So just stay tuned. It should be on your calendars, but if not, you can register today for the next part of part 2 and part 3. It's actually a really exciting webinar that happened today. So also, AIIM's 2023 Industry Watch Report is currently in motion. The annual State of Information Management Survey is live, and we'd love for you to take it. Results from the survey will be the driving force behind this year's Industry Watch Report. We've dropped the link in the chat, so send us your feedback. Some of the findings will be shared during AIIM's 2023 conference in New Orleans. And speaking of conference, where Cadence Solutions will be as well, AIIM 23 is headed to New Orleans and promises to be a conference unlike anything you've ever experienced. This year's theme is content in the flow of work, and the curriculum provides you with a comprehensive and proven methodology for mastering your organization's content to operate more efficiently, reduce costs, and stay out of trouble. Now it's the ideal time to expand your knowledge of automation and analytics to create real business values for your organization. Register now, you won't want to miss it. The link is in the chat. As we bring this webinar to a close, a last few minute reminders. This webinar is being recorded, so you can catch anything you want to hear again in a recap email that'll be sent within 24 hours. A link to the resources for this webinar was put in the chat. You'll find a copy of this presentation as well as additional resources through that link. Also, don't forget to take our feedback survey and let us know how we did. A big thank you to our sponsors today, Cadence Solutions, for a wonderful, informative webinar. Before we go, though, I'd like to ask Jordan if he has any last-minute takeaways or tips for our audience.
Not much. What I'll probably just do, Nina, is just put up my contact information if anybody's interested.
Absolutely.
I think we missed that slide, so let me know if you can see that. But if you do want to get a hold of me, we're big on LinkedIn. We're going to post a lot of how-tos as well. We have a blog, so we're very open and transparent about how to do things as opposed to death by PowerPoint and some of the other presentation styles. So also at AIIM, if you're going to the conference, I think we're the sponsor of the cornhole tournament. So that's coming up, which will be kind of interesting. So we'll talk more about that maybe in March. So
absolutely. And Kevin, do you have any last minute takeaways for our audience?
Oh, this has been great. You know, I think the tools that are available within Microsoft 365 are really changing the game. And as I mentioned before, managing content means managing the process. Here we have some really practical tools and techniques that really can make a difference in key processes. So it's been great to have Jordan here, and I'm looking forward to our next discussion in March.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. This is Nina from AIIM saying, see you next time.